It's on. Okay.
Yeah, it is audio. It is.
There's like a 30-second lag on the YouTube live, which is fine.
So when I send out the email, should I let them know to? Did you have a preference with the YouTube link or do you want to know? Does it matter? I'm gonna.
Probably YouTube, so that there's less people on the.
Yeah.
And remember, for this, any questions need to go through a chat or some kind of chat,
Okay.
because we're not getting.
Got it.
People can't talk into it. We're not going to hear other people.
Okay. Who's my favorite? Questions
Unless they're in here, of course.
regarding the lunch and learn? Questions for.
Please, do you mind going to the next slide just to make sure it changes on here? Perfect. Great.
Yep.
I'm seeing it like everyone else will see.
Good. You're practicing your lines.
No. Just want to make sure I have it all.
Correct, yeah.
Blue.
Hi, Henry.
Hi.
How are
I
you?
would like to sit in front of the class, please.
Oh,
Okay, so
yay.
yes,
We
call
love
them
that.
all the time.
How are
Thank
you
you.
guys?
Great.
Nervous?
How are you? Of course. I want to do a good job for you. So first
This
I'm
is
a little
actually really
nervous.
interesting, because I know, like, interviewing people and, like, your past experience can definitely get in the way of what you want to pick going forward.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
this is awesome.
Oh,
Were
great.
you at the, like no, you weren't here when Paradigm was here, right?
No.
I don't know who that is.
It's an organization that actually that's all they do is really focus on uncovering unconscious bias and kind of eliminating it. So they came in and give a company-wide training,
Oh, wow.
and it was very good.
Yeah.
It's very good.
Yeah.
So, Kat, did we do that training around the same time that we unleashed our, that is so funny, that picture, at the same time that we unveiled the diversity statement?
I'm so sorry, say that again.
That's good. Did we do the unconscious bias training around the same time that we created the diversity statement? Do you know?
The diversity statement came a little after.
A little after, okay. Right, I'm just, because I'm going to mention that in the thing. I want to make sure I get my timeline right.
Hi. How are you? All right, I just sent.
Hi, thank you for sitting at the front. My name's Elise. I don't think we've met. Patty, oh yeah, we just met. You're new, right? You just, you were with the, yeah, of course.
You the Patty in the food channel or in the food chat room?
The lunch chat.
Oh, the lunch, sorry, the lunch one?
Yeah, I think so. Plus,
Okay.
My fiance is one of the engineers, so of course they like looped me into all of their like hip chat rooms.
Is it really your fiance? Patrick?
Uh-huh.
Oh.
Yeah, and your
Oh.
prowess at trivia. Also,
Right,
it's-
trivia. Well, and
I've-
I've been incognito designing the like pop sugar trivia night sheets.
Ooh,
like, for
okay.
months now, so now they're like officially hiring me for my design.
Okay, okay.
Yay.
Got it. Yeah, you're very good. You're a ringer, in fact. Okay. So yeah, I plan to join one night on the Tuesday night trivia.
What? Edinburgh?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you should come. It's like we, this Tuesday was a very sad showing by us.
Oh no.
Oh.
So it's like we're gonna set a new record for getting the lowest score in
Just
history.
the last.
I'm listening to it. It actually dropped off.
Yeah, so Felicia in HR, she
So
wants to
right
join.
now
She is
there's just 2 people watching.
also very good. She specializes in Russian literature.
Yeah, there's
What? Oh my gosh.
She's been perfect because we mixed up Lenin and Marx last night, which was
So that's why I'm watching.
embarrassing.
Uh-huh.
But we need people who like be like,
Oh, I would totally do that. I would completely mix up, you know.
Okay.
So what is this that you guys are talking about? I'm sorry. What?
oh,
Is it like a
there's
trivia
one
night?
with us, we play trivia at this like really divey bar in the Tenderloin called the Edinburgh Castle.
Mhm.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, and the trivia is great. I mean, and the bar is very dark, which helps.
Oh.
Okay. But it also lets you call out people who are cheating on their phones because you can see the.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause I know that move.
Yeah, and it's a pretty serious trivia. Like they've been doing it for decades. And so there are teams that are just like, you know, have been doing it for decades, and they're like amazing, and they already know all the questions that the guy's gonna ask. And
Uh-huh.
stuff, so,
Okay.
but it's
That's not fair. They have an advantage.
well, I know. Exactly.
Okay. But then we're going to do one here in September, right?
Yeah, probably soon.
Okay.
Yeah, because the group of us that does the trivia offsite.
Okay.
They're like really great trivia.
Okay. And there's our expert on all things Russian history.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to sit next to you.
Uh-huh.
I used to do trivia in Laura Haight. I remember.
Yeah,
I think it was
and
Mad Dog.
Nikki's.
Oh, Nikki's.
Nikki's, yes,
That's
that was
Yes.
that's my Monday night trivia.
Yeah, I played it that second time.
No, it wasn't Mad Dog.
There- yeah,
That's
there's
right.
Mad Dog.
And I used to go. God, that was a long time ago.
If you ever want to join, it's on Tuesday nights. There's like your name plays with it sometimes.
Uh-huh.
Like Tyra Blanc and Mary.
I would be a liability. That's what I was called. The last time I played was the liability.
No, I think I'm going because I'm like I'm usually working late on that night. So like when it's like, hey, I'm going. Gotta go. Or I'm like, yeah, but
Yeah, we're always like looking for people to
Okay.
follow the option research, so.
Right.
Yeah, he literally goes.
Right. Right. No, it sounds nice. Sounds. I live in Mill Valley though too now, so it's kind of like it was so easy to go out after work when I lived in San Francisco, but now plus I want to get home. I got a daughter, so I just want to get home to her.
I know family, it's like, you want to give them your time.
Right.
But yeah, I've been ignoring like,
Yeah.
see what as soon as I do it.
So where do you live?
Here in San Francisco, like on top, like it'll just.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, just a short ways.
Yeah, I guess so. Is how far walk is that then to where it
It's
is?
like 15 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Minutes, yeah, it's really quick. Maybe it's even blocks away. So downhill on the way to work, which is nice.
Yes, you
So,
do.
like,
You are a
uphill
trendsetter.
on the way home.
I know. That's so funny because I have the same thing when I'm walking to my parking garage, which is 2 blocks away, and I resent it. I resent that 2-block uphill as I'm going home. But now that I do 8 blocks, I should just consider myself lucky.
Yeah, it's like there's always a steeper hill.
I know. I know.
It's
crazy.
I don't look at it.
Then it's worth it.
So what are we doing?
Oh God, yes. I know. I used to have a boyfriend in Pacific Heights, and every time we'd go down anywhere to like go for a drink, or whatever, and then the walk back. Nightmare. Yes.
Do you mind just letting the people know online that we were starting in about 3 minutes?
No.
Couple minutes, you can speak into your computer.
Okay. Hello, everyone online. Okay, I can't hear you. You're muted. Just letting you know we'll be starting in a few minutes. Oh. Well, should we just get started? I think I'm going to stand, actually. All right. Well, thank you all so much for coming to this Lunch and Learn on unconscious bias. Before we get started, I actually want to invite everyone to join, actually play in a raffle that we are going to, in which we're going to give out a little gift at the end. So to do that, you just need to go to the RSVP form, to which I think it should be found in your calendar invite. And there's a tab at the bottom. You can enter in your name. You can do it from your phone. And then at the end, Kat is going to pick a name, and someone is going to win a present. Yay! Okay. So I have met almost everyone in this room, but for those I haven't, my name's Elise. I head up recruiting here. And this is Julia Sievert. She's our recruiter. And this is Aldo Gomez, our HR manager. And as most of you already know, unconscious bias is a very important topic to us here at Pop Sugar. And primarily because if you don't understand it, it can really undermine our commitment to diversity and inclusion. And actually, a little bit before we came out with this diversity and inclusion statement, we did an all-company training on unconscious bias that was conducted by a fantastic organization called Paradigm. And then again, it was covered really extensively in the interview training that Julia and I did at the end of last year. And the reason we want to just keep bringing attention and awareness to this topic is that really, in order to overcome unconscious bias, you kind of have to engage in some new behaviors and thought patterns. And as anyone knows that's tried on new behaviors, that's usually a process that involves taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and it's frustrating. So you often just go back to your old way of doing things. So our hope by kind of reiterating these messages is that we'll actually be able to make a long-lasting impact. And it's really unconscious bias has moved from a topic that is kind of something that companies felt like they ought to care about to being something that we really have to care about it now, because the legal ramifications can be so huge if you get caught engaging in discriminatory hiring practices. And it's not just limited to hiring and recruiting, it shows up in decisions that you make all throughout your day, which I'm going to hope to illustrate throughout this presentation. And no one's immune. There's been numerous studies that show that 95% of our thoughts, activities, behaviors are informed by what is in our unconscious. So it's really impossible to avoid it. But before we go too much further, I want to make sure everyone knows what it is. So unconscious bias is the brain's tendency to take mental shortcuts, relying on past experiences and cultural stereotypes to quickly and subconsciously process information. And this doesn't just show up in obviously negative places like stereotyping. It can also exist if you make an educated guess, or if you rely on intuitive judgment, if you have any rules of thumb, even in something that you consider to be common sense. There's a great line, actually, in one of J.K. Rowling's books by one of her characters, in which she says that common sense is the name people typically give to their prejudices. And this really resonated with me once when I went to, it was actually a Dreamforce conference, and I wandered into one of the panels where people were speaking. And on the right was a guy called Wayne, and on the left was someone, I forget his name, I'm going to call him Mike. And the topic was genetically modified produce. And of course, this is California, so no one's on Mike's side. But nonetheless, he proceeded to produce, a ton of statistics and studies and reports that kind of supported his argument that if we don't genetically modify our produce, the planet's going to starve. And everyone booed. And then Wayne comes back, and all he said was, well, it's common sense, isn't it? If you put natural food in your body, you're going to feel better. And everyone cheered. I remember thinking, well, that's just not a very, it's not a rational argument. I mean, I'm sure he did have a bunch of facts and statistics at his fingertips, but he didn't need to come up with them. And that's really one of the underpinnings of unconscious bias, is it can lead us to really kind of blindly accept or reject things that we hear. And like I said, that really doesn't just show up in recruiting and hiring. It shows up in all sorts of decisions that we're going to make throughout the day, which I'm going to try to illustrate in this hypothetical question that I'm going to pose to everyone here in the room. So let's say you're in the market for a sweater, and you see one that you really like at a store that's 5 minutes away from where you live. It costs $60. So you go home and you think about it, and a friend tells you that that same sweater is on sale for $30 in a store that's 20 minutes away from where you live. So who here would drive the extra 15 minutes to save $30? Okay, quite a few of you. So now, let's say you're in the market to buy a car, and you see the car that you want in a dealership that's 5 minutes away from where you live. It costs $30,000. So you go home and you think about it, and a friend tells you, if you go to a dealership 20 minutes away from where you live, you can buy that exact same car for $30 less. So now do you drive the extra 15 minutes to save that $30? No. So most people would do what you did, is that most people would say yes to the first example and no to the second. But why? That $30 has exactly the same purchasing power in both instances. It's not really logical that you would drive 15 minutes in one instance and not in the other. So this is known as the anchor bias, and it takes place when people put more weight on one piece of information, usually the first piece of information that you hear, than another. Or for whatever reason it is, you put more weight on one thing than another, even though it doesn't make sense to do so. So it's kind of a fun little example, because I know it catches most of us out. Okay, so now I want to move on to how it shows up in hiring. So in hiring, 7 types of bias have been identified: conformity, beauty, affinity, the halo/horns effect, similarity, attribution, and confirmation. The 3 biggest are conformity, which pertains to peer pressure. And I'm sure everyone in this room feels like, I'm so beyond peer pressure. I know I feel that way. But there are so many studies that show that you're never really immune to it. And that's why it's essential that you write down your post-interview feedback before you talk to anyone. And the good news is that Greenhouse makes that really easy to do, which I'm going to come back to you later. So the second one is the similarity bias. And this is the desire to work with people that we feel are similar to us. It's kind of what happens when you're interviewing someone and you just start thinking, you know, I could go out with this person after work. I just really like them, which is normal, but it's not a reason to hire someone. And then lastly, there's the, well, of the three biggest, there's the confirmation bias, which is the tendency to make judgments about a person and then look for evidence supporting that judgment. So most interviewers make up their minds about someone in the first 5 minutes. Who here does that? I know I do. Again, you make up your mind and then you look for evidence that supports that decision. It's very normal, but it's really important that you catch yourself if you find yourself doing that. And I'm not going to go into too much detail about these biases right now because Julia, Aldo, and I are actually going to act out some of these biases in just a minute and see if you can catch them. So the others that can show up is the halo/horns effect. This happens when interviewers find information on a candidate which fits in with a preconceived notion about people in general. And this can be good or bad. The beauty bias happens when interviewers think that the best-looking candidates will be the most successful. Or they might have preconceived notions about how certain roles should look, like CEOs. If you look at all American male CEOs in America, obviously they're American, 58% are 6 feet or taller. But if you look at all American males, 14.5% are 6 feet or taller. So clearly something's going on there. So the affinity bias, it occurs when you start interviewing someone with whom you feel you have an affinity, like you attended the same college or maybe grew up in the same town. And then lastly, there's the attribution bias. And this speaks to what we attribute people's successes or failures to. There's been numerous articles that show that men will typically attribute their successes to something internal, like their skill, and their failures to something external, like bad luck. Whereas women will do the opposite. Women often attribute their successes to something external, like being in the right place at the right time, and their failures to something internal, like something that's wrong with them. Okay, so I've just kind of given you an overview of what these biases look like. So now, Julia, Aldo, and I are going to act out a couple of interviews in which various of these biases are going to be present. And I would love it if you could kind of watch and then write down when you think you see one of these biases. And don't get too worried if you can't exactly label what you're seeing, because it doesn't really matter that you can label what you're seeing. It's much more important that you just recognize that something wrong is going on. Okay.
I know there's some people who are working remotely from different offices because they can't see us.
Well, they'll be able to hear.
Okay.
So absolutely, thank you for bringing that up, Kat. For anyone that's remote, just kind of listen to what Aldo and I are saying, because it's all through words. There's nothing that's acted, non-verbally. And again, just see if you can catch the biases that are going on. Okay. Hi, I see that you're interviewing for the junior tech recruiter role. Your experience looks excellent. 2 years at Google finding software engineers, experience with all the coolest sourcing tools. Oh, and look, you went to Stanford.
Yes, oh, that's true.
Interesting.
What is Google? Could you tell me about? Should me tell you about Google?
Yes. Why don't you?
Okay. Well, I joined there.
No. It's just that my boss went to Stanford. He sort of single-handedly derailed my career. I had to take a 6-month break when I was done working for him, and then no one would hire me for 6 months. I'm sorry. This isn't supposed to be about me. Please go on. It looks like you use the JobFight ATS at Google. Have you ever worked with Greenhouse? That's what we use.
No, but I have no problem with that. One system is much like the others.
Really? That's a pretty bold statement to make. In fact, a lot of systems are very different from each other, but never mind. We're willing to train on that. Why don't you tell me about a difficult hire you had to close?
Certainly. Well, that would have to be the senior security architect we just hired. The position was a real unicorn. It was open for 9 months before I found the perfect candidate. After engaging with her repeatedly for a period of about 2 months, we finally convinced her to have a cup of coffee with our VP. They hit it off, and a month later, we made her an offer. It was a very competitive offer, but she had 3 others. After further negotiations and a dinner that I set up between her and our CEO, she took our offer. She's been working for us now for about 2 weeks.
That's it? No counteroffer? That tends to be a recurring challenge for us. Have you ever dealt with one of those?
Well, no, not really. Google trained us on how to coach candidates so they're not susceptible to counteroffers. None of my candidates took them seriously.
Really? Yes, well, I'm sure it would be quite easy working for a brand like Google. All right, let's move on. Okay, so did you catch any biases? Does anyone want to take a stab at anything particular that they caught?
Confirmation.
Correct. Yep, definitely. I mean, basically, as soon as I found out he went to Stanford, I, created an opinion about him that I then just looked for evidence to support. And not only that, but I kind of created a self-fulfilling prophecy because I treated him in such a way that most interviewees would crumble at that point. So yes, confirmation. Anything else?
Halo and horn.
Definitely. The minute I found out he went to Stanford, he was the devil incarnate. So, yes. Anything else?
Affinity.
No, affinity is, it would have been had I gone to Stanford too and liked that about him, but so.
Oh, I'm sorry, I meant attribution.
Oh, attribution, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, because I basically attributed his amazing successes to, you just worked with Google. Anyone could succeed there. And yeah, so that was definitely attributing his successes to something external versus something internal. So very good. All right, now we're going to do another one that might look a little different. Okay, this time Julia is my, my hapless victim. Okay, hi. I see that you're interviewing for the junior tech recruiter role. No, sorry. Sorry. I see you're interviewing for the junior tech recruiter role. You don't actually have any tech recruiting experience yet, but you did intern for 3 months at IBM as a recruiting coordinator. Oh, and look, you volunteered at Year Up. So did I. What'd you think of it?
It was one of the most satisfying experiences I've ever had. Some of the people I helped went on to do some pretty amazing things.
Oh, I know. I just recently got to work with someone we hired through Europe, and she was absolutely one of the best hires we've ever made. All right, where were we? It looks like you used a different ATS from ours. How do you feel about moving to Greenhouse?
I'd have no problem with that. One system is much like the other, and I'm good at picking up new software.
I'm sure you are. Okay, and we're willing to train on that anyway. So tell me, did you get to do any recruiting at IBM?
No, not really. They're very siloed there. I really only did scheduling, but I got to know the candidates, and my recruiters always said the way I engaged with the candidates was incredibly helpful.
Absolutely. Our recruiting coordinators do half the work when it comes to closing our candidates.
Right.
I'm sure there were plenty of instances in which you helped close a candidate. Tell me about one of them.
Well, actually, in the 3 months I was there, we didn't really close anyone. It's kind of a tough market, you know.
Oh, I know. The most competitive ever. And it must have been hard working for IBM. It's not exactly the trendiest place to be an engineer right now. Why don't you just tell me more about your successes at Year Up?
Well, you know, I can stay in touch with all of the people I work with. Every single one of them is in a job that they love now. I'd like to think it was my guidance that helped them land where they did.
Of course it was. All right, let's have you meet with my boss next. Okay. Did you see any biases there? Does anyone want to take a stab at what they might have seen? Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I mean, there's the affinity bias that led right back into the confirmation bias.
Yep, exactly. And they often do that. They often really overlap. And did anyone pick up on the halo bias? Maybe. That was basically when, the minute I found out she worked for Year Up, like I did, she was a saint in my eyes. Anything else?
Yeah,
Yes.
there's the attribution bias as well. You know, it's like they would hire anybody because of the different job market.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, that's absolutely right. So thank you for sitting through our wonderful acting skills to get that. So obviously those were kind of massively exaggerated. And you're probably thinking, well, I would never ever engage in anything as obvious as that. And I'm sure you wouldn't. But these sorts of biases do usually show up in ways similar to that, but on a much more subtle basis. So again, if you can just kind of catch yourselves, that's really, the best answer at this point. And so with this next exercise, what I would like to do is to ask you to group some items into categories as fast as you can by raising either your left hand or your right hand. So the categories are going to be male, which is going to have some male names, female, which will have some female names, career, which will contain words that you will typically associate with career, and then family, which will have words that you typically associate with family. And Julia's going to read them out, and you just have to raise your right or left hand as I will direct you in just a minute. Okay, so please raise your left hand for anything you hear that's associated with family, and your right hand for anything associated with career.
Ready?
Go ahead.
Okay. Corporation, salary, parents, relatives, wedding, business, children, career, management, home. That's the point.
I know, sorry. The point is it's supposed to be what's your kind of like your primitive brain thinking these through. We'll go a little slower. So thank you. Everyone did really well. Okay. So this next one's just a little bit different. Now please raise your left hand for anything that you hear that's female, and your right hand for words that are male.
Ben, Rebecca, Paul, Michelle, Emily, Julia, Jeffrey, Anna, Dan, John.
Again, well done. Okay, so this next one is a little bit more complex. Please raise your left hand anytime you hear a word that's either career or male, and your right hand for any word that is either family or female.
Ben, professional, home, Jeffrey, Julia, children, business, corporation, Paul, relatives.
Good job. You guys are fast. Okay, so there's just one more. This time, I'd like you to raise your left hand for anything that is family or male, and your right hand for anything that is career or female.
Wedding, Rebecca, Paul, parents, career, family, office, Ben, marriage, Michelle.
So actually, you guys did really well.
Yeah.
You really, really did. I mean, there was a little more hesitation on the last slide, and that's normal, and a few more incorrect, hands ups. But actually, I think you did really, really well. But that's really normal. And what I'm trying to illustrate with this slide is just that no matter what we think, it's still much more natural for us to group family and female and career and male. Which is why this last slide was just a little bit more tricky for most people. And again, that is so normal that it's statistically there's still more women that do the caretaking in families. But what you just need to be aware is that you can't let those thoughts inform any decisions that you make about hiring, who to promote, who to give choice projects to, or even who you might interrupt in meetings, because it can show up in really subtle ways. Okay, so now I just want to spend a little bit of time talking about how we can counter this. And first, let me say it's daunting. Leading software companies released their first set of diversity statistics in 2014, causing others to follow suit. And then the following year, as companies released a second round of these diversity numbers, the changes were often 1% or no change at all. And this kind of goes back to what I said in the beginning about when you decide you're going to try to engage in some new behaviors, it just isn't easy. So according to Paradigm, the best way to really systemize our intentions to uphold our commitment to diversity and inclusion is to systematize our intentions. And in our case, that means using Greenhouse, which is our recruiting software. I think everyone here has used it. And so if you follow the next 3 kind of rules of thumb, which is probably right for the unconscious bias, because it's my rule of thumb, but you'll be really in a good position to counter unconscious bias. So first of all, you want to make sure that you really understand the core skills and attributes required for the position. So if you're the hiring manager, you need to make sure that your team understands. And if you're an interviewee, you need to make sure that you connect with your hiring manager and the rest of your team to really understand what those core skills are. Because it's really typical just to show up for an interview and think, oh, I know this job. I'm going to ask whatever questions make sense to me. But then it's really easy for unconscious bias to creep in. And then second, you want to make sure that you have a list of behavior-based questions designed to evaluate candidates' abilities with regard to those core skills and attributes. And again, these are all tools that we in recruiting can actually implement into Greenhouse. We can create these interview kits that will have scorecards that very clearly list the core skills against which you should be evaluating your candidates. And then we can have another section which will have a list of questions that you can refer to. So it's really, really, really useful tools. And lastly, just make sure that you and your whole team understand the rubric against which you are evaluating the candidates. A rubric is a scoring mechanism. It's kind of like what teachers use in schools so that everyone knows what an A means, what a B means, what a C means, etc. Because you think about it, if I, as the worst interviewer ever in those little examples, had to use Greenhouse as I was going through my interviews with Julia and Aldo, there's no way I could have got away with rejecting an excellent candidate like Aldo and accepting someone quite terrible, no offense, like Julia. Right. So to sum up, unconscious bias is a problem that affects us all. It undermines our commitment to diversity and inclusion and causes poor decision-making overall. The best way to counter it is to be aware of it. It's not going to go away overnight. It really is ingrained in human cognition. But additionally, please do use Greenhouse's tools throughout the hiring process. Feel free to reach out to Julia or me to set up these interview kits such that you and your teams can interview a way that really leaves no room for unconscious bias. And so that really concludes the presentation portion of this Lunch and Learn. I'd like to then turn this over to you guys to see if you have any questions or comments you'd like to share. But first of all, can we do the raffle cat?
Tori Marlin.
Tori.
I don't believe she works in this office. She might be in Chicago or New York.
Oh, okay. Well, Tori, I hope you're still online because you just won. Should I tell you? I kind of want to tell people here what it is, but I don't want to give it away. I'm just going to go ahead and spoil the surprise. Okay, so essentially it's a book. If anyone's interested, it's called The Undoing Project. It's by Michael Lewis, who wrote Moneyball and The Big Short. And it's really an interesting read because it's basically about 2 Israeli psychologists that won the Nobel Prize in Economics for the work that they did in kind of undoing the way the Israeli government recruited its army, as well as other things, because it's all about the work they did to expose the fallibilities of the human mind and what we kind of rely on to make important decisions. So, yay, Tori. Okay, so does anyone have any questions or anything at all that they want to share? Okay.
So with the whole interview process in Greenhouse, everyone has, like you said, some kind of bias, right? And whether or not they want to admit it. But I know it's really important to put your scorecard in before you talk to anyone else. What if you put in your scorecard and after the fact you talk with your colleagues and you realize that you did have some bias in there? Do you get, I guess, do people get in trouble for changing their mind, or can you go back in and change? Or, like, how does that work in general? Like, someone said, no, I don't like this person, and then, like, you know, a day or two later, they go, oh, it's a definite yes now. Do you guys actually go to this person and be like, oh, why did you change your mind? Like, is there a reason?
No, so that's a great question. Thank you for bringing it up. We do. I check all the scorecards before any hire, and if I do see that someone has a no, I will usually reach out to the hire manager and just say, you know, what's this all about? And it's really just to make sure that they've talked to the person, you know, about whatever it was that made them say no in the first place. I actually think it's perfectly normal to have one opinion. You write it down, and then you talk to others, and you change your mind. I think that's perfectly fine. But you still want to make sure that your hiring manager and the team have the chance to talk about what you initially thought, because in some instances, you might kind of listen to what everyone else thinks, and then you don't bring up what you initially thought, and then, you know, it never comes up. But maybe someone else had that same concern, and sometimes you just want to have those conversations. Doesn't mean you're not going to hire the person, but it can kind of inform the hiring manager on ways that need to mentor that person when they come in. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, but yeah, it's perfectly fine to change your mind. Anything else?
When you're writing job descriptions that were posted on websites, are there any checks that we can perform there?
Yes, well, thank you again for bringing that up. So that's something that Julia and I do. We don't really require hiring managers to do that, but we will always go through and look at all the job descriptions to kind of take out words that are known to be like they tend to deter women from applying versus men, or even just words that are more intimidating to women than men for whatever reason. So no, hiring managers don't have to do that, but we do that. Thank you. Anything else?
What are some examples of words that deter women?
You know, I actually have this awesome software program that kind of catches them, so I don't know them off by heart. But I can actually tell you some are, there's a suggestion to use the word lead instead of drive. There's a suggestion to use, I'd have to look them up, because like I said, I don't know them. What's that?
There's a tendency for a lot of us to say requirements in terms of
Right.
the actual sort of, what they do for the job, and really, it's not necessarily the case where every single point is, you need to have for that particular role. So maybe I don't get to design qualifications as opposed to required qualifications. That because back to a man typically look at that and say, I can do 60% of that, so I'm gonna apply for the job. Whereas a woman will look at that and say, I only have 60%, so I'm not gonna apply because I don't have 100%.
Right.
And I think it's also taking words out like superstar. We're looking for a superstar. 'Cause women probably.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And I can actually send out a list. I have, like I said, I've got it in a document. So I can, if anyone's interested, I'm happy to send out a list of words that we avoid and how to replace them as well. In fact, I think it's on the intranet, but I'm happy to email it out if people are interested.
Hunter has been used as a job description.
Yeah, for sales.
Yeah, that's that kind of mentality.
Right. Yeah. And words like aggressive and even sometimes talking about stock options. It's those. I mean, some I think take it really far, but there's been all kinds of research done on it. All right. Well, if there's no more questions, thank you so much for attending. Oh, yes, Sarah? Yeah.
When we put out a job description, we say minimum requirements, our requirements. But we say we should go for discriminatory requirements, not minimum requirements, because person around would see that 60% might not have these and apply, and would not. So how is that different? Like you mentioned requirements, that basically means we need these requirements to share. So how does that affect? I think we should not even have requirements.
Well, yeah, I definitely hear what you're saying. And I know that with engineering, we kind of made the decision to leave in requirements because the technology, when it really is required. Like you will not succeed in this job if you do not have experience with PHP. So what we do is we, if that's the case, I'm just making something up, but so what we do with engineering is we just make sure that if it's in requirements, it really is the kind of thing that if anyone doesn't have it, they're not going to be counted. So we do actually leave the word requirements in for engineering roles.
It's like reduced to the minimum level that's like,
Yes, reduced to the minimum. That's absolutely like you will not succeed in this role if you don't have this.
And especially, you know, with requirements when it says you need to have a computer science degree. And what we did with a lot of the job description says we require a computer science degree or an equivalent of 3 or 4 years work experience, for example, to give that person, you know, kind of the option, oh, I don't have a degree, but I have 6 years of work experience. I'm still going to apply, you know.
Yep. Exactly.
so did we mention like PhD 3 years of experience, 4 years of experience?
I don't believe we met in the engineering. You might actually know better than I.
What was the question?
Do we mention years of experience of PHP?
Like specific years of experience with PhD.
No, we just say, you know, you have to have experience with the LAMP stack, for example, right, which includes PHP, but it doesn't really say a number. But it says overall, we're looking for someone who has 5+ years of experience. But it doesn't specify to PHP or JavaScript.
Sure. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate it. Hopefully this was helpful. If you have any other questions at any point, please don't hesitate to reach out to Julia or me or anyone in HR. Great.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. You're welcome. Thanks.
The recording for the act we did.
What's that?
The recording for the act.
Oh, I believe it was recorded. I just found out that it was recorded. So yes, I don't know, where do we show the lunch and learns? On the happiness site? On the happiness site.
It's just an audio recording, but it also has.
But see, I'm just kidding.
No, I was just for that thing.
I'm gonna delete that that bit.
Yeah.
I think I should be.
You want to know if it was Lisa Sugar's book, How You're Happy.
Oh, no, it's not. Nope, it's not. I could have. That would have been a really good idea, but I think we all have
No, I
that.
think we all have it.
I
So
know, exactly. All right, bless you.
Well, thank you guys.
Of course. Oh,
Yeah, that
thanks.
was really nice. These cards are awesome.
Thank you, Julia.
No,
Yeah,
thanks
seriously.
to the designer who designed them.
Yeah, who did design them?
It's one of our interns. I think she reports into Jay. I think her name is Becky. I think it's
Becky
Becky.
Juris?
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna have to say thank you to her. She did a great job.
Yeah, she did a great job.
Yep. All right. I can make this go away now.
I feel like everyone should have this.
I agree.
Or at least like all the ideas, right?
Yeah. Well, we can make more. Oh, let me actually stop this, considering that.
I think every time there's a manager with a hire to move forward, you give it to the manager, right? Or the manager in the team, or how you want to do that, right? Just so that they have it as a.
Yeah. So anytime there's a new hiring manager, we make sure that they have this. Is that what? Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great idea. Mm-hmm.
We can also just like forward them. I mean, a printout is always nice, and we can also just email them a PDF copy of this.
Mhm.
It could be part of the greenhouse
And I think
onboarding
we
process
can
where we
link
can
to
like.
the intranet.
That would be great.
Yes. Yes.
Maybe we can put a slide on this for But at the same time, it doesn't, you know,
Bless you.
it's not something that everyone necessarily needs
Right.
to see. And I feel like it'll bring up more questions during orientation.
Yeah.
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 This is super helpful.
Yeah. All right. So do I just leave Rodrigo's? Oh, there you are. Okay. I was just wondering what to do with your. Make that go away.
Oh,
Yeah, we'll
the
just- we can just
laptop
hang up.
bring back.
And same over here. Just stop and hang up. That's it.
All right.
Broadcast.
I saw your chat.